Welcome to my channel. Enjoy your viewing. Subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos. I still remember the smell of that liquor store, that mix of old cardboard, glass bottles, and something sharp I couldn't name back then. I must have been 5, maybe 6. My dad had pulled over to grab a bottle of wine on his way home, and since I was with him, he told me to stay close. But stay close and stay still weren't really in my vocabulary at that age. While he was talking to the guy behind the counter, I wandered off, not far, just to the back where a half-open door led to a little office. I peeked in, saw a chair, and did what any hyper kid would do, sat down and started spinning. There was a desk with papers, a stapler, a calculator, nothing that meant anything to me. I think I looked at everything like it was treasure. I didn't mess anything up, though. Just touched, looked, spun, and got bored within minutes. I left before my dad even finished paying. It wasn't anything, or so I thought. A few days later, everything changed, and not in the way you'd expect from a story about a 5-year-old in a liquor store office. A few days go by, and nothing unusual happens. I'm back to cartoons, cereal, and digging holes in the backyard looking for dinosaur bones. Then one evening, I notice my dad's face tighten when he picks up the phone. He says aha a few times, listens for a long while, and then looks at me with this weird expression. Not mad. Not scared. Just confused. He hangs up and says, "We need to go down to the police station." Now that gets my attention. I didn't even know regular people could just go there unless something was seriously wrong. My first thought? I figured maybe someone found the wallet my dad lost a month ago. Maybe they were giving out medals for being awesome at spinning in chairs. Who knows? I was a kid. We drive over in silence. My dad's jaw is clenched. I remember trying to read his mood, but I didn't have the tools back then to understand it. I just knew something was off. The cop station looked exactly like on TV, minus the drama. Beige walls, old furniture, tired-looking people. They took us into a small room with a desk and a young officer. I remember his name tag said Martinez. He smiled at me, then frowned like he was trying to put together a puzzle that didn't quite make sense. And just like that, the spinning chair came back into the picture in the weirdest way possible. So we're sitting in this cramped little room, and Officer Martinez looks at my dad and says, "This your kid?" My dad nods. I'm swinging my legs because they don't touch the floor yet, still clueless, still in my own world. Then the officer pulls out a photo, and there I am, clear as day, sitting in that damn office chair, mid-spin, grinning like an idiot. It looked like a still from a security camera. I thought it was funny at first, like, wow, I'm on TV. But the vibe in the room shifted. The officer leans forward and says something like, "So here's the deal. A few $1,000s went missing from that liquor store the same day you were there." My dad immediately sits up straighter. "Are you serious?" he says, his voice flat. Not angry. Yet. The cop nods. "Owner's son says he saw your boy in the office. Claims the kid was messing with drawers. Says he ran out when he got caught." I just sat there blinking. Because I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't even scared yet. I think I laughed, which probably didn't help. And that's when I saw my dad's hands clench into fists on his knees. My dad turned slowly to look at me. Not with anger, with this pause. Like he was trying to process the idea that his 5-year-old might be some kind of baby-faced criminal mastermind. "Did you take anything from that office?" he asked me, calm but serious. I shook my head. "No, I just spun in the chair. I looked at stuff. That's all." The officer studied me like I was some sort of science experiment. "You didn't open any drawers? You didn't touch anything inside the desk?" "No," I said again. I meant it. But now I was starting to feel weird. Because everyone was looking at me like maybe I did do something. And when you're that young, if enough adults act like you're guilty, you start wondering if maybe you actually are. That's the part one still think about today. The way your own mind can betray you. My dad asked, "So, what exactly went missing?" The officer opened a folder and replied, according to the report, over $3,000 in cash. Mostly 20s and 50s. They were kept in a locked drawer in the office. That's when it hit me. $3,000. I didn't even know what that meant. That was cartoon money. Monopoly money. It wasn't something a 5-year-old could even understand. But someone, somewhere, was saying I took it. And worse? They were trying to make it stick. So we're still in that little beige room, and now the tension is thick. My dad's quiet, jaw set. I'm fidgeting, not really scared but definitely not comfortable. And then, for reasons only a 5-year-old can justify, I see a swivel chair in the corner. You guessed it, I got up, walked over, and started spinning again. Right there, in the middle of this super serious conversation about stolen money and police investigations. Legs dangling, arms out. Just spinning. The cop looked at me, not like I was a suspect anymore, but like he was starting to get it. He cracked the smallest smile, looked at my dad, and said, "He did this when you visited the store?" My dad nodded. "Yeah. Same thing. Sat down. Spun around. We were there, what? 5 minutes?" Martinez leaned back and folded his arms. "Okay. I think I see what's going on here." He stood up, closed the folder, and said, "Thanks for coming in. I believe you can go." That was it. Just like that. My dad raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" The officer nodded. "Yeah. I've got what I need." We left the station, but the feeling didn't leave me. That whole car ride home, my dad kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. Something wasn't right. And I was about to find out just how wrong things had gone behind the scenes. So we're still in that little beige room, and now the tension is thick. My dad's quiet, jaw set. I'm fidgeting, not really scared but definitely not comfortable. And then, for reasons only a 5-year-old can justify, I see a swivel chair in the corner. You guessed it, I got up, walked over, and started spinning again. Right there, in the middle of this super serious conversation about stolen money and police investigations. Legs dangling, arms out. Just spinning. The cop looked at me, not like I was a suspect anymore, but like he was starting to get it. He cracked the smallest smile, looked at my dad, and said, "He did this when you visited the store?" My dad nodded. "Yeah. Same thing. Sat down. Spun around. We were there, what? 5 minutes?" Martinez leaned back and folded his arms. "Okay. I think I see what's going on here." He stood up, closed the folder, and said, "Thanks for coming in. I believe you can go." That was it. Just like that. My dad raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" The officer nodded. "Yeah. I've got what I need." We left the station, but the feeling didn't leave me. That whole car ride home, my dad kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. Something wasn't right. And I was about to find out just how wrong things had gone behind the scenes. Later that night, after dinner, my dad sat down at the table with a beer and called my mom over. He didn't usually talk about anything in front of me, but this time he didn't seem to care that I was nearby. He told her everything, the missing money, the accusation, the photo, the way the officer changed his tone when he saw me just being a kid. Then he dropped the bomb. The owner's kid told the cops that our son went into the office, forced open the drawer, and ran off with the cash. My mom just stared at him. "He's 5. "I know," he said. That's what the cop figured out too. But for a few days there, that teenager tried to throw our kid under the bus. Turns out the owner's teenage son had a habit of sneaking cash from the store. This time, it was thousands. And when the cameras showed someone going into the office, he saw his out. He thought blaming a little kid would work. Because what 5-year-old could defend himself? What 5-year-old could explain what he did or didn't touch? What 5-year-old would even be believed? I remember feeling small in that moment, not because I was 5, but because I realized someone older, someone who should have known better, tried to ruin me to save himself. And I didn't even know his name. The next morning, my dad was already on the phone before I'd even finished my cereal. He wasn't yelling, but his voice had that sharp edge, like steel under velvet. I could tell he was pissed, even if I didn't understand all the words. He called the store owner directly. Said something like, "Your son tried to make a criminal out of my 5-year-old. We're not letting that slide." Apparently, the owner was embarrassed. Claimed he hadn't known the full story. Said it was the police who'd been investigating, not him personally. But the way my dad reacted? He didn't buy that for a second. He told the guy he wanted an apology. A real one. Not just to him, but to me. Because even if I didn't grasp the seriousness of it at the time, that kind of accusation sticks. My name was written down somewhere now. I had a file. That word hit me weird. File. Like they'd started building a folder on me for sitting in a chair. I remember asking, "Am I in trouble?" My dad kneeled down next to me and said, "No. But someone should be." That's when I saw it in his eyes, not just anger, but betrayal. He'd gone to that store for years. He knew the owner by name. And now the guy's son had tried to frame his kid for felony theft. It wasn't just personal. It felt dirty. A few days later, the store owner called our house. I remember the landline ringing and my dad picking it up with a sigh. I was nearby, playing with Legos or something, but I could hear every word. The owner's voice was awkward, all stiff and rehearsed. "I just wanted to clear the air," he said. It was a misunderstanding. My son was confused. He panicked. My dad didn't respond at first. Just let the silence hang. Then he said he didn't panic. He lied. He used my son. Your cameras showed the truth, not his story. There was another pause. Then the guy added, "We won't press charges. We've explained everything to the officer. We won't press charges." Like they were the victims. Like they were doing us a favor. My dad said, "He's 5. You tried to give him a criminal record at 5. There was no apology. Just excuses. Just noise." And the more I listened, the more it started to burn, even at that age. I didn't have the words yet, but I knew what shame felt like. I knew what it meant to be made small. When my dad hung up, he looked at me and said, "You did nothing wrong. Don't forget that." And I didn't. But it didn't stop me from starting to question everything after that. Adults. Authority. Trust. That one stupid spin in a chair had changed how I saw the world. I wasn't the same kid afterward, not really. It didn't happen overnight, but the innocence started to crack in quiet places. I still played. I still laughed. But I watched people differently. Adults, especially. I started noticing when someone was lying, even if I didn't have proof. I became cautious in rooms where I used to just explore. I stopped spinning in chairs. It's funny, that one harmless thing I used to do just for fun? It suddenly felt dangerous. Like curiosity could get you in trouble. Like being seen meant being blamed. It took a long time before I realized what had really happened. I had been weaponized. My presence. My face. My actions. All used by someone else to cover their own guilt. That realization, even at 5, starts a kind of clock in your head, a countdown to the day you stop thinking the world is fair. And maybe the worst part? No one ever told me the other kid's name. No apology. No real punishment. No responsibility. He just faded back into the background like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I was left with questions I couldn't even ask out loud. After that whole mess, my dad changed too. Not just the way he looked at people, but how he handled things, especially around me. He started locking his desk drawers. He wouldn't let me wander off in public anymore, even for a second. If we went into a store, he kept one hand on my shoulder at all times. It was like he didn't want to risk giving the world another chance to twist the truth. One time, I asked him if he was mad at me. He looked surprised. No. Never at you. But I could feel it, not anger at me, but anger around me. He was furious that the world had tried to chew me up and make me look like something I wasn't. That stuck with me. It made me pay attention to who watched me, who believed me, and who stayed quiet when something wasn't right. Even at school, I started getting weird about being blamed for stuff. If something went missing, I'd sit rigid, not saying a word, eyes straight ahead, not because I did anything, but because I'd already seen what happened when someone says you did. And let me tell you, once you've been accused of stealing $3,000 at 5 years old, even a missing blue stick starts to feel like a court case. It wasn't until much later, maybe when I was in my teens, that I finally learned what happened to that kid, the one who tried to blame me. And when I did, it wasn't some heroic moment of justice or redemption. It was just a little bit of gossip, slipped into a conversation with a relative who worked in retail. Apparently, the owner's son had been caught multiple times taking money from the register. Small amounts at first, but it added up. And on that particular day, when the big cash went missing, the kid was already panicked about being caught. So, instead of facing up to it, he thought framing a 5-year-old would solve his problem. The thing was, the cops had been doing their job, watching the footage and checking everything carefully. The boy's story fell apart the second they took a deeper look. They didn't even need to check my fingerprints, they just watched the video. But the owner's kid? He still got away with a lot of it. No charges. No real consequences. He just moved on to his next problem. And that's when I realized it wasn't about me. It never was. It was about him protecting himself, using whoever he could to cover up his mistakes. The whole thing had been a game to him. And I was just a pawn. When I think back to that time, it's not just about the lie, it's about the way the whole thing made me feel. The way I had to learn that trust isn't given freely. It's something that can be taken away in an instant. The hardest part, looking back, was how powerless I felt. I had no idea what to do when everyone around me treated me like I'd done something wrong. I didn't have the words for it then, but I learned that day what it felt like to be blamed for something I didn't do. And no matter how many times they said I was innocent, that feeling never really went away. But I also learned something else: people will lie to protect themselves. And it's not always the person you expect. Sometimes, it's the guy who seems the most trustworthy, the one who's been in your life the longest. That betrayal, the idea that someone close to you could just throw you under the bus without thinking twice, is something you can't unlearn. And it changes you. So, yeah. I'm different now. I don't trust as easily. I don't believe the first story I hear. And I've learned that actions speak louder than words. Because, in the end, what really matters isn't what people say happened, but what they actually did. And that lesson stuck with me for life. As I grew older, I became more aware of how many situations in life mirrored that one. The idea of being falsely accused, of having my character questioned by someone with an agenda, seemed to pop up more than I would have liked. And the more I experienced, the more I started to realize just how often people use others to cover their own mistakes. It wasn't just the teenage kid at the liquor store, it was almost everywhere. But with every new experience, I started building armor. I became more self-reliant, more skeptical. I didn't just take things at face value anymore. And I learned to trust my instincts, something that had been a casualty of that earlier event. At first, that skepticism felt like a shield, protecting me from the people who might try to pull me into their mess. But over time, I realized it also made me distant. Cold, even. I'd built so many walls that I stopped letting people in, and it took years to start feeling like I could trust anyone again. Still, I've learned to hold on to one thing from that time: the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it feels like no one's watching. Even when it's hard. Because if I'd stayed silent back then, who knows what would have happened to me. But my dad didn't. He fought for me. And that's something I carry with me, even today, the idea that sometimes, you have to fight for your truth. Looking back, I know I'm not the only one who's been in a situation where something just didn't feel right. Maybe it's being falsely accused, or maybe it's dealing with someone who's trying to shift the blame to you. But here's the thing I've learned: don't let other people define your story. If something goes wrong, don't just let it slide. Don't let the world rewrite your history for you. You need to be your own advocate, even if you feel like you're not being heard. You need to stand up for yourself when no one else will. But don't go it alone. If you've got someone in your corner, whether it's a parent, a friend, or anyone who cares about you, don't take that for granted. Sometimes, having someone who believes in you makes all the difference. And when you're the one doing the accusing, remember this: it's easy to point fingers, but it takes strength to own up to your mistakes. We all mess up. We all make bad decisions. But how we handle those mistakes defines us. So, my advice? Stay true to yourself. Speak up for what's right, and trust your instincts. You can't control what others do, but you can control how you react. Don't let anyone take away your voice, and don't ever forget the power of standing up for your own truth. Now, as I look back at that time, I can't help but wonder how different things could have been if I had never walked into that office. If I'd never sat in that chair, spun around a few times, just out of curiosity. Would the truth have still come out? Would I have learned these lessons at all? I think about how often we let small things slip by, assuming they don't matter. But sometimes, it's the tiniest moments, like a 5-year-old spinning in a chair, that end up having the biggest impact. Because those moments stick. They shape you. They teach you. And while I'll never forget the feeling of betrayal, of being wrongly accused, I also know it made me stronger. It gave me the ability to see through the stories people try to sell you. It taught me to question the narrative and, more importantly, to stand up for myself when no one else would. It's easy to let those wounds define you. To let the hurt shape how you see the world. But what I've learned is this: it's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you choose to move forward. You can let the past control you, or you can use it to build something better. I guess that's the real lesson, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever felt misunderstood or betrayed. You don't have to let the lies win. You can tell your own story. You can control the way you move forward. And maybe, just maybe, you'll even find peace with it all. And that concludes the story. I hope it resonates with the emotions and themes you wanted to capture.